welcome to lesson 2 for the RLA testing prep for reading. This is the lesson for the third. We're going to focus on comprehension and application skills. Again, we're going to keep working on specific skills, looking at specific skills out through the 15th of March. This one's going to be more of an overview of the different skills and concepts you're going to see on the RLA test itself. So it's kind of a whirlwind lesson tonight. We're going to go over a lot of different things. I really suggest pausing the lesson and grabbing the links from this lesson, either through the slide deck itself or through the QR codes I'm going to have up on the screen. If you have a smartphone, all you'll need to do is take a picture of the screen when those slides are up, and it will identify the links on the screen and take you through to those YouTube videos. So I'm going to give you a walkthrough of the different comprehension and application skills that you're going to see on the RLA test tonight. And we're going to look at example questions starting in the next class. So tonight is an overview, and we're going to go ahead and jump into it. So this is the Thursday class. Just a quick reminder, please mute yourself once you join. Enable your live video. Be present, use active listening, use the chat area if you have any questions. If you need to unmute and ask a question, that's fine too. Real quick, here's my contact information again. It's also at the top of the course syllabus. My email is here and my Google number is here also. And just a quick reminder that on the weekends I might respond slowly because my weekend plans are to hang out with the boys. And we're going to go ahead and jump in. So tonight's class, again, is an overview. We're going to run through these comprehension skills and analysis skills. I'm going to include YouTube links for further explanation for each skill. The goal of tonight's class is to see what terms and concepts are familiar and which are unfamiliar. So you can watch the YouTube links on your own time. You could watch them during the workspace at the end of class also. In the next few classes, we're going to be doing deep dives into the skills themselves, but this is an overview lesson. I like to do these at the beginning of each session because if you are familiar with some of these, you can skip over them. If you're unfamiliar with them, you can dive into them and use that study time. After class or during the workspace, we're going to take some of these unfamiliar terms and view those videos to get a sense of what they mean and how they work in a text. So first off, let's talk about how the GED aligns with reading comprehension. So there are a few important concepts that will help you score better on the GED. Let's talk first about the best method for taking the Reading Ready test or the GED itself to get the highest level of comprehension. So how can we take the test to score better on the test? So the best thing you can do is to read the questions first. So before you begin reading the text, read your questions. They're specific to the passage, and it helps to know what they are before you dive into the passage itself. You'll get a good idea of what you're supposed to look for, and you can narrow your focus without getting overwhelmed. If you do the reading first and then the questions, it's easy to kind of get things muddled and get out of sorts. The next thing you need to do is to be aware of exactly what the questions are asking you to look for. And for that, you need to have a thorough comprehension of literary vocabulary. We're going to talk about some of those vocab terms that might be in the questions or that will be in the questions on your GED reading test. It's also useful to take multiple reading practice tests, reading college level texts, really doing any of the distance learning options, any of those 3 distance learning options that we talked about in the previous class, working in Aztec, doing Newsella, or reading a college level 1060 to 1260 Lexile level text. We're going to look at some of the vocabulary terms in there that are going to be on the test today. And then the last thing that you want to do to have the maximum comprehension is read over the text briefly. So you briefly want to scan the text, scan the passage, to allow you to narrow your attention to what the questions are looking for. So you already know what the questions are asking because you looked at the questions first, so you're not going to be distracted by all the information in the text, which happens. Authors are going to use specific tools and techniques in their writing, and understanding these techniques is going to help you analyze the text and get a higher score on this section of the RLA. So we're going to be looking at what you need to look for in the passage in just a second. And we're going to devote time in classes this session to each of these topics on the 10th and the 15th also. So you're looking for the main idea, you're looking for the author's intent, you're looking for supporting details, you're looking for explicit and implicit language, you're looking for allusions, and you're looking for connotations. We're going to dive into what those are specifically, individually, during the lesson today. The first thing that you're going to want to look for is the main idea of the text. So the text's main idea is usually early on in the passage. The title will usually give you a big hint as to what the main idea is. You're looking for words and ideas that are used repeatedly throughout the passage or are related to each other. And you ask yourself, what is this mostly about? If you were to file that passage somewhere, what would you file it under? That's a good hint towards the main idea. And this is the first example of a QR code that you can use for this class. So if you're looking at this slide deck, you can just click the link main idea. It will take you through to this Khan Academy video. It's 5 minutes long. Or if you're watching this on your phone, if you screenshot this slide, this QR code will take you through to that Khan Academy video also. And that's only if you're unfamiliar with the concept of main idea, or if you feel like you'd like to get a little bit more specific coverage of the main idea and would like to dive a little bit deeper into that concept. Real quickly though, how to find the main idea of a passage. You're identifying the topic of the passage. What are they talking about? Again, if you were filing it in a library, where would you put it? Would you put it in nonfiction? Would you put it in fiction? Would you put it under science or history? So could you summarize the passage in your own words? How would you tell someone about what you just read? Look at the first and the last sentences. The last sentences will probably summarize. Look for repetition of ideas. What comes up time and time again? That's your main idea of a passage. The next type of the next concept, the next type of comprehension skill you're going to look for is what is the author's intent. So in most pieces of a literary test, it's the author's intent to make an argument. So in most of your passages, the author's making an argument for or against something. By gathering the main idea and looking for a thesis, which is their central claim, their central reason for writing, you can usually find the intent, the purpose, or the reason why they wrote that text. You can ask yourself, what's the author trying to say to me? What is the author's intent? What's their purpose for this? The three most common reasons that people write is to persuade, to inform, or to entertain. So if they're persuading, they're making an argument. If it's informing, then they're just giving you information. If it's entertain, then they're just showing you like interesting things or giving you dialogue that's, interesting and keeping your attention. There's a link on this page also that takes you to another Khan Academy video. It's got some great visuals and it goes into detail on some good ways to detect why an author's writing something. What's their intent? What do they intend? The next skill that you need is to detect the ability to detect a supporting detail. So you have the main idea of a passage, and the main idea is propped up and brought forward through supporting details. It's explained and described through supporting details. These can be found all around a passage. They're typically in the paragraphs after the introduction. Usually they're directly supporting the main idea. They're answering the why of the passage. Why is this conflict happening? Why is this character acting this way? Why is this argument correct? And so on. The video I got for you here has some really great examples of words to look out for to detect supporting details and information. So I like this video because it gives you specific words to watch out for to find those supporting details and to recognize them. So if you get a question asking something along the lines of, what is a supporting detail in this passage for this main idea, you can hunt for these specific words, and that can help you out if you're looking for a system to kind of detect supporting details. The next video and tool I have for you is to talk about explicit language. Now we're not talking about like on an album that's marked explicit because there's swears and stuff in it. This is explicit language talking about exactly what's written in the passage, just the facts. The test is intentionally written in the way it is and should be taken literally. So, the GED is an explicit text. There's not a lot of implicit language in the test. There's no hidden or further meaning to what's written on the test itself. So this video here on this slide actually runs through explicit and implicit information very briefly. Explicit language is pretty straightforward. It's literally just there's nothing to read into. If you think about the directions on if you buy a new washing machine or if you buy a refrigerator, and it comes with directions. Those are written in explicit language. There's no implicit language in the directions on a washing machine, which brings us to implicit language. So this video is targeted at implicit language, which is more complicated than explicit language. It's about what's implied. Um, a lot of your literature passages on the GED or on any standardized test are going to ask you about implicit language specifically. It's the implied meaning of phrases and figures of speech that the author uses. It's important to understand implicit language because it makes the reader look beyond the written words. This is the part of English class that English teachers tend to be stereotyped as to being really into. It's the whole the light at the end of the dock represents the American dream and stuff like that. It's representative. It's figurative language, and we'll look at a couple examples of really commonly used questions or really commonly found concepts in the GED in just a second. At this point in the class, there'd be a 5-minute break. Go get something to eat or drink, stretch, etc. All right, so the next part of this class is talking about figurative language and making inferences while reading a prompt. So figurative language is a collection of different types of writing, and inferences are assumptions you can make about a topic based on the information present. Let's go into that a little bit deeper. One type of figurative language is allusions, not illusions with an I, like magic tricks, but allusions with an A. And they're references to historical persons or events, popular characters, or literary characters. If somebody goes behind your back at work and you call them a Judas because they went behind your back and they betrayed you, and you're referring to the Bible and the betrayal of Christ in the Bible or whatever, you're making an allusion to a text. Or if you're like me and you're playing with your sons and you say, I am your father, and you're referring to Star Wars, that's an allusion. They often play an important role in text because they can portray a complex idea or theme or trait in one simple image or one quote. They're quick. Allusions may be simply mentioned in the text, or they may be carried out throughout the entire passage. So they can be long or they can be short. There's a more detailed walkthrough in the first link, and there's a shorter, faster explanation in the second link here. I think that allusions can be a little complex, especially if English isn't your first language. Figurative language in general could be difficult if English isn't your first language or your primary language of communication at home. So these figurative language types are extra important to focus on if English is not your first language. The next type of figurative language is a connotation, which is an implied association or feeling that accompanies certain words. They're not the definition of the word, but they're the emotions that go along with the word. This is a Khan Academy walkthrough video. It's about 4 or 5 minutes long, but I'll talk to you about connotations and the feelings that go along with words. So if I wanted to say that a snake was creepy, or like if I had a pet snake, I could say that my pet snake is sweet, my pet snake is cuddly. I don't really have a pet snake. I don't think that snakes are cuddly. But if I wanted to describe a snake in positive connotation words, I'd say sweet, cuddly, other positive connotation words. But if I wanted to describe it in negative connotation words, I could say things like slimy or slinky, or just more negative terms to describe something. The video will go into more detail, and we're going to look at specific question sets later on in our session too. All right, a couple important literary terms and ideas. So when you take this GED language arts subtest, it's important to understand a couple literary terms and ideas. You should get familiar with these following terms because they're going to be used in some of the questions. Inference is a word that you're going to see a couple different places in the GED reading, and it's a conclusion or a reasoning based on details in a passage where you might be asked to make an inference about a character through their actions. So you're going to make a decision about a character's personality based on his or her actions. We make inferences all the time, all day long. We make inferences. If you're driving down the road and traffic slows to a standstill, you infer that there's a wreck somewhere ahead. If I walk into the playroom and I smell a bad smell, I will infer that a baby has pooped in a diaper and I've got to do a diaper. An inference is we're making an assumption based on the information that we have. We don't know that there's a wreck ahead. We don't know that the smell is a baby's diaper, but I can infer based on the information that I have that that's true. So I have two links for you here. The first link will take you to examples of inferences in an informational text. The second link will take you to inferences in literary texts. These are both good videos, and I have these two different links in here because you will see both informational and literary text. You'll see both fiction and nonfiction on the reading test. So it's useful to practice and to look at how to make inferences in those two different situations. All right, the next topic or the next concept is a hypothesis. This is so close to inference that I don't have any links for this slide. It's just a prediction about what will happen next. So you may be asked after reading a text to make a hypothesis about what happens next in the passage. This is just an inference that fills in the blanks about what happens after what you've already read. I don't have a video for you here because it's almost exactly the same as inference. They're such similar skills. If you want to talk through some examples of hypothesis during the workspace in class, we absolutely can do that. But I don't have any other tools here. The next skill that you're going to need while taking the reading test is the ability to produce and recognize generalizations. So a generalization is an assumption or a broad idea that can be made about a character, the environment, or things happening about the passage. You might be asked to make a generalization about the community in a passage, and your answer is going to be based on the details the author provided in the text. So this video specifically is aligned to the GED. The guy who gives it has a wonderful beard. I think it's a shorter video, but he's going to talk about how we make those generalizations and how to recognize those generalizations in GED reading passages. The last bit of the lesson tonight is about figurative language. So figurative language is about words that are not literal. So authors often use figurative language to create images for the readers. You might be asked to identify examples of figurative language from the text and decides which examples create meanings different from their actual definitions, or just say to explain what the figurative language is doing in a passage. The most common ones that you're going to see on the GED are metaphor, simile, and personification. You might see other figurative language, and we'll look at some questions that involve other types of figurative language later on in the course, but metaphor, simile, and personification are some of the most commonly tested. This link will take you to an explanation of all three of these, metaphor, simile, and personification. So there are some examples for each of these on this slide also. So metaphors are comparisons between two unlike terms. For example, Nissan's slogan, "Life's a journey, enjoy the ride," and "Life's a zoo." Life isn't literally a zoo, but it is figuratively a zoo. Similes are comparisons between two unlike terms or objects as well, but then they will use the words as or like. So an example would be like running like the wind, or blind as a bat, and brave as a lion. Personification gives objects human-like or animal-like traits or characteristics, so they're going to appear alive and have feelings. For example, the rundown house appeared so distressed. The house can't feel distressed; it's a house, so we're giving it that human emotion. Or the stars are dancing playfully across the moonlit sky. Stars aren't literally dancing. We're giving them that human ability in this description. All right, this is a short lesson. It's about 20 minutes. After we finish the lesson in class, we'll probably watch a couple of those videos in class. If people let me know that they are unfamiliar with those concepts, we'll pause and watch those videos. So the lesson in class will probably end up being somewhere more like 30 or 45 minutes long. But this video is only going to run about 20 minutes. During the workspace on Thursday, I'd like you to check in, log into Newsela or the Aztec system if you haven't yet. Make sure that you can access at least one of those tools. And if you can't access either of those tools on a regular basis, let's make sure that you can get your hands on a text that's somewhere in that 1060 to 1260 lexile range, so you can be preparing for the type of reading that you're going to do on the GED reading test. During this time, you'll check in with me, let me know how you're doing, how it's helping you prep for your test, and get some feedback and direction on how to use your time the best you can. Thanks so much for listening. I hope that you're doing well. If you are not able to make it to a live class, make sure that you reach out to me through one of these different ways to contact me and let me know that you watched or listened to the online recorded lesson, and I'll mark down that you listened to the recorded lesson in our attendance sheet, and you can get credit for attending a class and viewing that class session. And this is Mr. Brewer, and thanks for working with me, and I look forward to seeing you in class. Have a good one.